Professor Kang Wu floated through the corridors of the Stellar Engineering Academy, his magnetic boots clicking against the metal floors of Earth's most advanced orbital station. Through the massive viewport windows, Earth spun slowly below, its blue oceans catching the light from distant stars. This station had been humanity's pride for over 50 years, where the brightest minds came to push the boundaries of what was possible. Wu had dedicated his entire life to this place, at 62. His hair was silver, but his eyes still burned, with the same passion that had driven him to become one of humanity's leading spacecraft engineers. Today, however, that passion was mixed with something else, defiance. The holographic message from the Galactic Council still flickered on his desk, its alien symbols translating into words that made his blood boil. The Council, dominated by the crystalline Velta species and the mechanical Zephyrians, had declared human engineering methods outdated and inefficient. They wanted to implement their standardized galactic curriculum across all human institutions. Within 30 days, Lena burst into his office without knocking, her face flushed with anger. At 24, she was the youngest student ever to design a functioning ion drive system. Her small frame belied a brilliant mind that could visualize complex spacecraft mechanics in ways that amazed. Even Wu, Professor, did you see the news? Feats, she gasped, her tablet clutched in her hands. They're not just talking about changing our curriculum. They want to shut us down completely. Wu nodded grimly. I know, now. But we're not going down without a fight. Through the Academy's central hub, students gathered round floating holographic displays showing news from across the galaxy. The reports were devastating on Mars Colony. The Engineering Institute had already surrendered, accepting Velta, instructors who dismissed human creativity as chaotic inefficiency. The Jupiter Mining Academy had been forcibly closed when they refused to abandon their hands-on teaching methods. Darkness fingers danced across her tablet, pulling up classified communication she had intercepted using her advanced hacking skills. Professor, look at this. They're not just replacing our methods. They're trying to replace our way of thinking entirely. The intercepted messages revealed the aliens' true plan. The Velta believed that human unpredictability was dangerous to galactic order. Their crystalline minds operated on pure logic and mathematical precision. They couldn't understand how humans could look at a broken spacecraft engine and somehow know exactly what was wrong just by listening to its sound. They think we're primitive because we use intuition, Wu said, studying the alien communications. They can't comprehend that our so-called flaws might actually be strengths. Outside the Academy, massive alien vessels began to arrive. The Velta ships looked like floating crystals, their surfaces reflecting starlight in perfect geometric patterns. Zephyrian craft resembled enormous mechanical insects, bristling with sensors and computational rays. These beings had mastered space travel through pure calculation and rigid adherence to established formulas. Na pulled up footage from the Academy's external cameras. Look at their ships, Professor. Everything is perfectly symmetrical, every angle calculated to mathematical precision. But look at our vessels. She switched the feed to show human spacecraft docked at the station. They were different, organic curves mixed with angular designs, each ship unique, reflecting the personality of its creator. Human engineers didn't just build machines. They crafted them with an artistic eye that the aliens found incomprehensible. The Academy's communication system crackled to life. A Velta official appeared on the main screen, its crystalline features sharp and emotionless. When it spoke, its voice was perfectly modulated, lacking any trace of warmth or personality. Human Educational Facility designated Stellar Engineering Academy, the alien announced. You have received notification of curriculum standardization requirements. Compliance is mandatory. Your primitive methods will be replaced with efficient, Galactic standards. Students throughout the academy stopped what they were doing to listen. Many looked scared, but Wu noticed something else in their expressions, the same defiance he felt burning in his own chest. Furthermore, the Velta continued. Human instructors will be replaced with qualified alien educators within the specified timeframe. Your species' tendency toward illogical problem-solving approaches has been deemed counterproductive to galactic advancement. The transmission ended, leaving the Academy in stunned silence. Then, slowly, a sound began to build. The sound of human voices raised in anger and determination. Students began shouting, declaring they wouldn't give up their unique way of learning and creating. Na looked at her professor with fire in her eyes. What do we do? Wu smiled for the first time that day. We show them what human engineering can really accomplish. We have 30 days to prove that our primitive methods can create something none of their perfectly calculated minds could ever imagine. As he spoke, Wu's mind was already racing with possibilities. The aliens wanted efficiency and standardization, but humans had something else, the ability to dream, to see solutions where none should exist, and to turn impossible ideas into reality through sheer determination and creativity. The battle for humanity's future had begun, and it would be fought not with weapons, but with the power of human innovation. The massive conference hall of the Stellar Engineering Academy had been transformed into something resembling a galactic courtroom. Floating holographic displays showed representatives from dozens of alien species, all watching as humanity faced its greatest challenge. At the center of it all stood the Velta Prime Minister, its crystalline body towering 9 feet tall, refracting the station's lights into rainbow patterns across the walls. Prime Minister Zethkalo's voice resonated through the hall like breaking glass. Humans of the Academy, it announced, its tone dripping with condescension. We shall provide you with one final opportunity to demonstrate the worth of your species' educational methods. Park Jin sat in the front row next to his research partner, Kim So, both of them barely 25 but already recognized as prodigies in theoretical spacecraft propulsion. Jin's hands were steady as he took notes, but so could see the tension in his jaw. Behind them, dozens of human students and professors waited in silence. The Prime Minister's crystalline fingers manipulated a holographic interface, and suddenly, the air filled with complex mathematical equations that seemed to dance and shift like living things. Your challenge is simple, Zethkalo continued. Design and construct a functional faster-than-light propulsion system using only your primitive human mathematics and mechanical systems. A ripple of shocked murmurs ran through the human audience. Faster-than-light travel was the holy grail of engineering, something that had eluded human scientists for centuries. The aliens had achieved it through quantum biological computing, systems that merge living tissue with advanced artificial intelligence, technology far beyond human understanding. You have exactly 28 days, the Prime Minister added, its voice taking on an almost gleeful tone. When you fail, as you inevitably will, all human educational institutions will be permanently closed and replaced with proper galactic learning centers. Kim So leaned over to whisper to Jin, they're setting us up to fail. No species has ever developed FTL technology without quantum biological systems. Jin nodded, but his eyes were focused on something else, while the other humans looked defeated. He was studying the alien ships visible through the hall's transparent walls. Each vessel was a masterpiece of biomechanical engineering, their hulls seeming to pulse with organic life while maintaining perfect geometric precision. After the committee dismissed them, the human team gathered in the Academy's main laboratory. Professor Wu had assembled the brightest minds available, Jin and So as lead theorists, along with mechanical engineer Li Min, electronics specialist Choi Yin, and materials scientist Park Hanna. The lab itself was a testament to human ingenuity. Jury-rigged equipment, modified tools and workbenches covered with half-finished projects. "All right," Jane said, pulling up holographic displays showing the basic principles of faster-than-light travel. The aliens use quantum biological systems because they can process multiple dimensional calculations simultaneously. They're living. Computers can exist in several states at once. So added her own diagrams to the display. But we're stuck with digital computers that can only process information in linear sequences. According to galactic science, it's impossible to achieve FTL without quantum biological processing. The team spent the first 3 days simply trying to understand what they were up against. The mathematics involved were staggering. Equations that described the folding of space-time itself. Calculations that required processing power beyond anything humans had ever built. On the 4th day, something interesting happened. Choi-Ian was tinkering with an old analog computer, one of the mechanical calculation devices humans had used before digital systems. As she fed complex equations into its gears and mechanical switches, she noticed something odd. "Hey guys, look." At this, she called out, her voice excited. "This old machine is giving me different results than our digital computers." Jin and So rushed over to examine Ian's work. The analog computer was ancient by galactic standards, using physical gears and mechanical processes to solve mathematical problems. But somehow, it was processing certain aspects of the FTL equations in ways their advanced digital systems couldn't match. It's the mechanical resonance, So realized, her eyes widening. The physical vibrations in the gears are creating harmonics that match some of the dimensional frequencies we need. Meanwhile, outside the academy, more alien ships continued to arrive. Zephyrian vessels with their insect-like designs deployed swarms of mechanical drones that observed every human activity. The drones were perfectly efficient, each one identical to the others, following programmed patterns with mathematical precision. But the humans were different. Li Min had started modifying their equipment in ways that seemed chaotic to alien observers. Instead of following standardized procedures, she welded new components wherever they seemed to fit, creating machines that looked more like sculptures than scientific instruments. "The aliens think we're being random," Min explained to the team. "But there's method to this madness. Human engineering has always been about adaptation and improvisation." Park Hannah made another breakthrough when she began experimenting with materials the aliens considered obsolete, instead of using pure synthetic compounds. She started mixing organic materials with mechanical components, creating hybrid systems that defied galactic engineering principles. By the end of the first week, something remarkable was happening. The human team wasn't trying to copy alien technology. They were developing something entirely new. Their approach combined mechanical systems, analog computing, organic materials, and digital processing in ways no other species had ever attempted. The aliens watched through their surveillance drones, recalling every human action with growing confusion. These beings operated on pure logic and established protocols, but the humans seemed to be creating solutions through intuition and creative experimentation. "They are not following any recognized engineering methodology," reported one Zephyrian observer to Prime Minister Zethkala. "Their approach appears completely chaotic." The Prime Minister's crystalline features shifted into what might have been a smile, exactly as expected. "Their primitive methods will lead them to inevitable failure. And then we can proceed with proper galactic education standards." But deep in the Academy's laboratories, Jin looked at the growing collection of hybrid human technology and felt something the aliens couldn't understand: hope. They weren't building a copy of alien FTL systems. They were creating something that had never existed before, something uniquely human, The 15th day arrived with frustration hanging thick in the Academy's main laboratory. Park Jin stared at the holographic displays showing their latest test results. All of them failures. The hybrid mechanical-digital system they had built was impressive by human standards, but it couldn't even begin to bend space-time the way faster-than-light travel required. Outside the lab windows, Velta observation drones hovered like glittering jewels, recalling every human movement. Occasionally, the crystalline beings would communicate with each other in their harmonic language, a sound like wind chimes mixed with breaking glass. Jin could almost hear the mockery in their alien voices. Lena sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by scattered papers covered in mathematical equations. Her hair was messy from running her hands through it in frustration and dark circles. Under her eyes showed she hadn't slept properly in days. "We're missing something fundamental," she muttered, tapping her stylus against a tablet. "The math works on paper, but reality keeps proving us wrong." Professor Wu watched his students with growing concern. Kim So had been pushing herself to exhaustion, trying to force their digital computers to process quantum calculations at impossible speeds. Choi Yan's mechanical analog systems were producing interesting resonances, but nothing that could actually fold space. Lehman's hybrid materials were strong and flexible, but they couldn't withstand the theoretical forces needed for FTL travel. "Maybe the aliens are right," Park Hannah said quietly, her voice barely audible over the humming of machinery. "Maybe we really are too primitive for this." That's when something unexpected happened. From the Academy's recreation area came the sound of music. Someone playing a traditional Korean gaijum, the 12-stringed instrument filling the corridors with haunting melodies. The musician was Lim Soo, a young engineering student who played to relax during stressful times. The aliens found the music disturbing. Their surveillance drones detected the irregular sound waves and classified them as inefficient. Noise pollution, but something about those flowing melodies caught Professor Wu's attention. "Wait," he said suddenly, moving toward the lab's audio pickups. "Listen to that pattern." Jin looked up from his calculations, annoyed at the interruption. "Professor, we don't have time for music right now." "No, listen carefully," Wu insisted, pulling up a sound analysis program. The gaijum's melody appeared on screen as flowing waves of mathematical frequency. "Look at the mathematical relationships between those notes." Na was the first to see it. Her eyes widened as she recognized the pattern, the harmonic progressions. "They're following the same mathematical relationships we've been trying to achieve with space-time manipulation." The team gathered round the audio display, watching as Sue's music created natural mathematical patterns that their computers had been struggling to calculate. The ancient Korea musical scales were based on mathematical ratios that somehow mirrored the dimensional folding equations they needed for FTL travel. "Music is mathematics made audible," Wu said, his voice filled with growing excitement. "Every culture in human history has discovered these same harmonic relationships independently. What if these patterns exist naturally in the universe itself?" Kim So was already pulling up her quantum mechanics equations, comparing them to the musical patterns. "Professor, you're right. The frequency relationships in traditional music match some of the dimensional resonance calculations we need." Within hours, the lab had been transformed. Instead of trying to brute force their way through the mathematical complexity of FTL travel, the team began approaching it like composing a symphony. They brought in musicians from the Academy's cultural programs, asking them to help translate scientific equations into musical harmonies. The aliens were completely bewildered. Their surveillance reports to Prime Minister Zethkale became increasingly confused as they tried to describe human behavior that made no logical sense. The humans have introduced acoustic vibration creators into their engineering workspace, reported one Zephyrian observer. "They appear to be attempting to solve mathematical problems through rhythmic sound production. Impossible." Zethkalo responded. "Sound waves cannot manipulate space-time curvatures. This proves their methods are even more primitive than we calculated." But the human team was making breakthrough after breakthrough. Lehman discovered that certain musical frequencies could enhance the resonance of her hybrid materials. Choi Yin found that programming her mechanical computers to follow musical timing created more efficient calculation patterns. Hark Hanna realized that organic compounds responded differently to various musical vibrations, becoming stronger or more flexible depending on the harmony applied. The most remarkable discovery came when Na began studying poetry alongside the musical mathematics. She found that the rhythmic patterns in traditional Korean poetry followed similar mathematical relationships to both music and quantum mechanics. "Look at this," she explained to Jin, showing him verses from ancient poems. "The syllable patterns, the rhythmic flow, even the emotional emphasis points, they all follow mathematical sequences that appear naturally in spacetime equations." Jin stared at the poetry analysis, his mind racing. "You're saying that human artistic expression has been unconsciously following the same mathematical laws that govern faster-than-light travel?" "Exactly," not applied. "While other species developed quantum biological computing to force their way through these calculations, humans have been naturally discovering these patterns through art, music, and poetry for thousands of years." The team began combining everything: mechanical resonance systems tuned to musical frequencies, digital computers programmed with poetic rhythm patterns, organic materials that responded to harmonic vibrations, and mathematical equations that flowed like musical compositions. Their laboratory no longer looked like a traditional engineering workspace. Musical instruments sat next to quantum calculation devices. Poets worked alongside physicists, translating complex scientific concepts into rhythmic verses that somehow made the mathematics clear. The alien surveillance drones recorded it all. But their reports became increasingly incomprehensible to the Galactic Council. How could primitive humans be making progress by introducing art and music into scientific research? Professor Wu stood in the center of the controlled chaos, watching his students work with a mixture of pride and amazement. They weren't just building a faster-than-light engine. They were discovering something fundamental about the nature of the universe itself. "The aliens think our emotions and creativity are flaws," he said to Na as she fine-tuned a harmonic resonance calculator. "But what if these traits are actually advantages? What if the universe itself operates on principles that require intuition and artistic understanding to fully comprehend?" Na looked up from her work, her eyes bright with excitement. "Then we're not just proving humans can build FTL technology. We're proving that our way of thinking, our supposedly primitive human approach, might be exactly what the universe has been waiting for outside." The alien ships continued their patient watch, confident that human failure was inevitable. They had no idea that inside the Academy, humanity was about to make a discovery that would change everything. 3 days before the deadline, Kim So sat alone in the Academy's quiet music room at 2 in the morning. The rest of the team had finally collapsed from exhaustion, but sleep wouldn't come to her. Their prototype engine had failed its 5th test that evening, and the weight of humanity's future pressed down on her shoulders like a crushing force. She picked up the old Gaijun that Lim Su had left behind, her fingers finding the strings, almost by instinct, so had learned to play as a child, before dedicating her life to quantum physics, and now the familiar instrument felt like a connection to something deeper than mathematics. As her fingers moved across the strings, playing a song her grandmother had taught her decades ago, something clicked in her mind. The melody was called Flowing Water. an ancient piece that told the story of a river finding its way through impossible terrain. But as so played, she wasn't hearing just music. She was hearing the mathematical relationships that had been. Hiding in plain sight for centuries, the river doesn't fight the mountain, she whispered to herself, her fingers still moving on the strings. It finds the natural path through in that moment. So realized what they had been doing wrong. Every species in the galaxy had been trying to force space-time to bend through raw computational power, like trying to break through a mountain with hammers. But what if space-time was more like water? What if it wanted to flow naturally, and all they needed to do was create the right channels? She ran to the lab, her heart pounding with excitement. The Gaijin's music still echoed in her mind as she pulled up the holographic displays showing their failed engine designs. Every attempt had been based on alien approaches, direct force applied through massive energy expenditure. That's not how humans work, she said aloud to the empty lab. We don't force things. We find the natural way, so began redesigning the engine from scratch, this time following the mathematical patterns from flowing water. Instead of trying to tear holes in space-time, she designed a system that would create natural resonances, allowing space-time to fold along its own inherent mathematical harmonies dot by dot. Jin and No found her surrounded by holographic blueprints that looked nothing like conventional spacecraft engines. The design was beautiful in its simplicity, organic curves that seemed to dance through three-dimensional space, following patterns that matched the ancient musical scales perfectly. So, you haven't slept at all, have you? Jin asked, but his concern turned to amazement as he studied her work. What is this? It's a harmony engine, so explained, her voice hoarse from hours of excited calculation. Instead of forcing space-time to bend, we're going to make it sing. Now leaned over the displays, her engineer's mind immediately grasping the implications. You're using musical resonance to create natural space-time fluctuations. The engine doesn't break the laws of physics. It uses them like a musician uses the natural harmonics of an instrument. The three of them worked together to refine the design, and by noon they had called in the rest of the team. Professor Wu studied the blueprints with growing amazement. Recognizing the genius in So's breakthrough, this is completely different from anything any species has ever attempted. He said, "You're not building a machine. You're building a musical instrument that plays space-time itself." The alien surveillance drones recorded everything, but their reports to the Galactic Council made no sense. The humans appeared to be building an engine based on acoustic principles, which was scientifically impossible according to every known law of physics. Prime Minister Zeth Kalo reviewed the reports with growing confusion. They are constructing resonance chambers tuned to irregular frequency patterns. It announced to the Council, this approach has no basis in established FTL theory. Perhaps their failure will be even more spectacular than anticipated, suggested Zephyrian. Counselor, they appear to have abandoned logic entirely, but in the Academy's manufacturing bay, something extraordinary was taking shape. Li Min worked with materials that seemed to defy conventional engineering, organic compounds. That became stronger when exposed to specific musical frequencies, metal alloys that changed their molecular structure in response to harmonic vibrations. Choi Yeon's mechanical systems no longer looked like traditional computers. They resembled giant musical instruments, with resonance chambers and harmonic amplifiers that could process mathematical calculations through sound waves rather than electronic circuits. Park Hannah had created a power source, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of burning fuel or splitting atoms, it drew energy from the natural vibrations of space-time itself. Using the same principles that allowed musical instruments to amplify sound waves on the final day. With just hours, Remaining before the deadline, Jin and Na made the last connections to their impossible engine. The device hummed with a deep, musical tone that seemed to resonate through the station's hull. Alien observers detected the vibrations but couldn't identify their source or purpose. "It's beautiful," Na whispered, watching as holographic displays showed the engine's harmonic patterns. The mathematical equations flowing across the screens looked more like sheet music than scientific formulas. The engine's test chamber had been modified with resonance dampeners to contain whatever happened during the activation sequence. As the countdown reached 0, So placed her hand on the control interface, not a button or switch, but a musical keyboard that would play the engine like a symphony. She pressed the first chord, and reality sang. The space round the engine began to shimmer like heat waves rising from summer pavement. The harmonic frequencies created natural fluctuations in space-time, not forcing it to bend, but allowing it to flow along mathematical pathways that had existed since. The universe began dot monitoring. Equipment throughout the station registered readings that should have been impossible. Space-time was folding, creating a localized field where the normal rules of physics became fluid and responsive to harmonic manipulation. "It's working," Jen breathed, staring at readings that showed their tiny prototype was actually manipulating the fabric of reality itself. The harmony engine is actually working. Professor Wu watched the displays with tears in his eyes. "Do you understand what you've accomplished?" he asked his students. "You haven't just built a faster-than-light engine. You've proven that creativity itself is one of the fundamental forces of the universe." The alien surveillance drones recorded everything, their sensors detecting phenomena that their programming couldn't classify. For the first time in galactic history, a species had achieved FTL capability without quantum biological computing systems. But more than that, the humans had discovered something that would shake the foundations of galactic science. They had proven that the universe itself was creative, responsive to artistic expression and musical harmony in ways that pure logic could never achieve. As the harmony engine continued to sing its impossible song, bending space-time through the mathematical beauty of ancient Korean melodies, the human team realized they were no longer just fighting for their educational institutions. They were about to change everything the galaxy thought it knew about the nature of reality itself. The grand demonstration hall buzzed with tension as representatives from across the galaxy gathered to witness what they expected to be humanity's final failure. Massive holographic screens displayed the event to billions of beings on thousands of worlds, all waiting to see the primitive humans embarrass themselves before the superior alien civilizations. Prime Minister Zethkala stood at the center of the crystalline observation platform, its towering form refracting the station's lights into sharp rainbows. Round the hall, delegations from dozens of species had ranged themselves in perfect order, the insectoid Zephyrians with their mechanical precision, the gaseous ethereals floating in their containment suits, and representatives from civilizations so advanced they appeared as pure energy patterns, humans of the Stellar Engineering Academy. Zethkala announced, its voice carrying the absolute confidence of a being that had never been wrong. "Present your attempt at faster-than-light technology for final evaluation." Professor Wu walked calmly to the demonstration platform, followed by his team of students who had spent the last month defying every law of physics the galaxy thought it understood. Behind them, technicians wheeled in their harmony engine, a device that looked more like a work of art than a piece of technology. The alien observer studied the human creation with barely concealed contempt. With their own FTL systems were massive, requiring quantum biological computers the size of buildings. The human device was elegant and compact. Its organic curves and resonance chambers seemed to pulse with an inner rhythm, as if the machine itself was alive and breathing. "This is your solution?" As Chancellor Vexthar of the Zephyrian Collective, its mechanical voice dripping with disdain, a primitive acoustic device, Kimso stepped forward, her hands steady despite the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. With respect, Chancellor. This isn't just an acoustic device. It's a fundamental reimagining of how faster-than-light travel should work. She activated the Harmony Engine's interface, and immediately the device began to sing. The deep, musical tones filled the demonstration hall, creating harmonics that seemed to resonate not just through the air, but through the very fabric of space-time itself. The alien observers shifted uncomfortably as their sensitive equipment detected energy patterns. Unlike anything in their databases, the engine doesn't force space-time to bend. Park Jin explained as holographic displays showed the mathematical relationships underlying their breakthrough. It encourages space-time to flow along its natural harmonic pathways, using the same mathematical principles found in human music and poetry. Lena activated the engine's primary systems, and reality began to shimmer around the device. The space-time monitoring equipment throughout the hall registered readings that should have been impossible. Localized dimensional folding occurring with minimal energy expenditure. Impossible. Whispered Prime Minister Zethkala. It's crystalline. Features flickering with confusion. Our calculations show that such efficiency cannot be achieved without quantum biological processing systems, Professor Wu smiled, stepping forward to address the assembled galactic representatives. That's because your calculations are based on the assumption that the universe operates purely on logical principles. But what if logic isn't enough? What if the universe itself is creative, artistic, and responsive to intuitive understanding? As he spoke, the Harmony Engine reached full operational capacity. The demonstration chamber around it began to distort, space-time folding in ways that created a localized faster-than-light field. Monitoring equipment registered energy efficiency, levels that exceeded even the most advanced alien technologies by orders of magnitude. Your species has always dismissed human traits like intuition, emotional reasoning, and artistic thinking as evolutionary flaws, Wu continued, his voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence of the hall. But these aren't flaws. They're advantages. They allow us to perceive patterns and relationships that pure logic cannot detect. The ethereal delegation, floating in their energy containment fields, began communicating in rapid bursts of colored light. Their translated message appeared on the hall's displays. The humans have achieved dimensional manipulation through methods our science cannot explain. This challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality itself. Choi Yin stepped forward to demonstrate the engine's practical applications. With practiced ease, she adjusted the harmonic frequencies, causing the space-time distortion field to expand and contract with musical precision. We can modulate the field strength by changing the musical keys, she explained. Different melodies create different types of dimensional effects. The alien representatives watched in growing amazement as the humans demonstrated capabilities that surpassed their own advanced technologies. The Harmony Engine could not only create faster-than-light travel fields, but could also manipulate gravity, bend light, and even create localized time dilation effects, all through musical harmonics and poetic mathematical relationships. Chancellor Vexthara's mechanical system sparked with confusion as it tried to process what it was witnessing. This violates established principles of galactic physics. How can acoustic vibrations manipulate fundamental forces? Because, Li Min said, activating additional demonstration modes. The fundamental forces themselves operate on harmonic principles. Music, poetry, and artistic expression aren't separate from science. They're different ways of understanding the same underlying mathematical truths. The final demonstration left the Galactic Council speechless. Park Hannah showed how their engine could be scaled up to power entire spacecraft or scaled down to fit personal transport devices. The harmonic principles were universal, applicable to everything from interstellar travel to local transportation, from power generation to communication systems. Prime Minister Zethkela stood in stunned silence, its crystalline mind struggling to accept what it had witnessed. For millennia, the Velta and other advanced species had believed that their logical, computational approaches represented the pinnacle of technological achievement. The idea that primitive humans could surpass them through art and intuition challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe. The Galactic Council, Zethkela finally announced, its voice lacking its usual arrogance, acknowledges that human educational methods have produced unexpected results. Professor Wu nodded graciously. We're not asking you to abandon your own approaches. We're asking you to recognize that there might be multiple valid ways of understanding and manipulating the universe. Diversity of thought isn't a weakness, it's a strength. Within days of the demonstration, everything changed. The Galactic Council not only withdrew their shutdown orders, but officially recognized human educational institutions as centers of alternative scientific excellence. Species from across the galaxy began sending their brightest minds to study at human academies, eager to learn how artistic thinking could enhance their own technological capabilities. The Harmony Engine's principles revolutionized galactic civilization. Spacecraft powered by musical mathematics crossed the galaxy in record time while consuming minimal energy. Communication systems based on poetic algorithms transmitted information with unprecedented clarity across impossible distances. But perhaps, most importantly, the galaxy learned that creativity itself was one of the fundamental forces of existence. Human traits that had been dismissed as primitive flaws were revealed to be sophisticated tools for understanding the universe's deepest truths. Years later, as Kim So stood in her laboratory aboard the first Harmony-powered starship to reach the galaxy's edge, she smiled at the sounds of students from dozens of species learning to solve physics problems through music and poetry. Humanity hadn't just saved their academies. They had taught the entire galaxy how to sing. The end.